Smoke curls around your face, acrid and thick, stinging your eyes before you even realize the battle is over. You hear shouts, no, not your husband's, not your kin, but voices rough and foreign, bouncing off timber walls. Now collapsing in fire, you stumble forward, clutching at the doorway that no longer leads into your home, because the roof has already given way. The sound of boots crunches over broken shields and bone, and you don't need anyone to tell you what comes next. Your world is done. The Vikings have arrived, and you're about to learn that losing a war isn't the worst thing that can happen. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this. With dignity intact, if something I share resonates with you, feel free to like the video and consider subscribing. Only if you truly want to join me on this journey. Now, dragged from the ashes, you feel rough. Hands twist your arms behind your back, a rope cutting into your wrists. You're hauled out into the cold air, the kind that bites but still smells of burning thatch. You see them, men taller than anyone you've ever known, clad in patchwork armor, hair wild and uncombed, eyes sharp with the focus of predators who just spotted an easy meal. One laughs at you, not out of cruelty but out of habit, as though your terror is as ordinary to him as sharpening a sword. And in that moment, you understand something ugly. To him, you're not a person, you're a prize. The ground beneath your bare feet is littered with wreckage, shards of pottery, scraps of cloth, your neighbor's belongings scattered like discarded thoughts. A helmet lies askew with no head inside it, which is good news if you're clinging to optimism. One of the raiders nudges it with his boot, then picks it up and shouts something in his language, and the others roar with laughter. You don't need a translation. It's probably the Viking equivalent of free hat. Dark comedy. Yes, but hey, even raiders recycle. You are shoved into a line with others, mostly women and children, some sobbing, some too shocked to make a sound. You all sway together like reeds in the wind, tied by ropes strung through your arms. The men guard you lazily, confident no one will resist. After all, the warriors are gone. You don't even want to imagine what happened to them, though a part of you knows, your husband among them. Left on the battlefield as carrion for crows, as you're pushed toward the beach, you hear the slap of waves against wood, the sound of longships rocking gently in the tide, their carved dragon heads grin at you, mocking, as though the ships themselves approve of your misery. You'll board one soon, and though you don't yet know it, that's your one-way ticket to a life where you'll never again be seen as your own person. A mainstream fact slips in here like an anchor. Viking raids weren't just about loot. They thrived on capturing people, slaves, hostages, bargaining chips. In fact, some historians argue the Viking economy leaned heavily on this human cargo, which was often more profitable than gold. Congratulations, you've just been turned into an early form of cryptocurrency, except you don't get to choose when to cash out. The ship looms closer, the salty wind catching in your hair as you're forced up a plank. The hull smells of tar and fish, and you immediately wish you had stayed in the burning village instead. Inside, the benches are already crowded with women like you, eyes wide, faces pale. You find a space on the rough wood, your legs trembling as the ropes dig deeper into your skin. The warriors row above you, their muscles flexing in rhythm, and every splash of the oars reminds you how far you're drifting from everything you knew. At night, when the ship anchors, you curl up under a ragged cloak. Someone tossed aside. The stars overhead glitter coldly, like an audience that doesn't care about the performance. You catch fragments of conversation in their guttural language. You pick out words you don't know yet. Silver, farm, woman, but your gut translates them just fine. Your inventory now, stored like grain or cattle. And if that stings your pride, well, welcome to the Viking Age. Here's your quirky tidbit. Because even in despair, there's trivia. Some Viking raiders were known to carry charms or amulets carved with runes, supposedly to protect them in battle or ensure good fortune at sea. Imagine that. A guy who just burned your village down is clutching a lucky rabbit's foot and whispering to Thor. The irony is so rich, it could buy its own longship. The journey stretches on, days blending together. You lose track of time, measuring only by when they throw you scraps of dried fish or a ladle of thin stew. The salt sores on your lips sting and your wrists ache from the rope. Sometimes a warrior glances at you like he's deciding whether to keep you or sell you. Neither option feels like winning. Your mind wanders. You imagine your husband's voice, telling you to stay strong. You imagine the children who didn't make it, their cries cut short. You imagine the gods, your gods, turning their backs as foreign ones rise in laughter. Somewhere in you, there's a spark of defiance. But it flickers faintly, like a candle in a storm. The ship finally grinds into a new shore. You smell pine and hear gulls, and the raiders cheer as though they're returning home from a vacation. You, on the other hand, step onto the sand like someone walking into a sentence without a period, unfinished, unresolved, and already weary of what comes next. You're herded toward a settlement, smoke rising from longhouses. The air thick with wood smoke and roasting meat. For the first time since your capture, you see Viking women watching you. Their eyes are curious, maybe hostile, maybe pitying. It's hard to tell. You wonder if they once stood where you do now, dragged from some other ruined place, or if they were born into this life and can't imagine any different. Either way, they don't reach out. They just watch. You realize something in that moment. The worst part of being captured isn't the chains or the hunger. It's the knowledge that your story doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to them, the raiders. The traders, the sagas they'll tell around their fires. You're just background noise in their legend. And as night falls over this strange place, the last thought before sleep takes you is that the fire back home didn't consume you. It just delivered you here. And here is where the real nightmare begins. You wake to the thud of boots on wooden planks, the rough scrape of ropes pulled tighter, and the barked orders that you can't yet translate but instinctively know mean move. Your legs are sore from sleeping on the ground, your shoulders stiff from days of restraint, but none of that matters because the Viking men have decided today is market day. And guess who's the merchandise? Spoiler alert, it's you. The longhouses loom behind you as they march you forward, past wagons, livestock, and children darting between stalls. The air's thick with the scent of smoked fish, mead, and sweat, the perfume of commerce in this world. You shuffle with the other captives into the center, where a wooden platform rises like a stage you never auditioned for. You're about to make your debut in the Viking economy, and let me tell you, the reviews won't be flattering. They line you. Up in front of curious eyes, men evaluating muscle, women muttering about chores, elders counting how many bodies they might barter for silver or land. You're poked, prodded, inspected like someone checking the ripeness of fruit. One man even lifts your chin to see your teeth, and you realize you've been downgraded from person to horse at auction. You'd protest, but the ropes do all the talking for you. A mainstream fact grounds this humiliation. Viking slave markets were real, and they weren't small. Towns like Hedeby and Dublin thrived on this trade, where human lives were exchanged alongside amber, furs, and alpons. Captives from raids could be shipped across Europe, even as far as the Middle East. In other words, once you're here, your destiny could zigzag across continents faster than a budget airline itinerary. You're shoved into the hands of a burly trader who begins rattling off numbers while another jots them down on a tally stick. Your value is now calculated in hack silver, chopped bits of silver weighed for fairness. Forget being remembered as the wife of a warrior. You're remembered as approximately 72 grams of shiny metal. Talk about a resume downgrade. A crowd gathers as the trader boasts of your strength, your youth, your usefulness, He doesn't mention the fire in your eyes, but maybe that's because buyers don't care about spirit. They care about whether you can grind grain, weave cloth, or warm a bed. It's a job fair without the dignity of free will. And you, unfortunately, are the booth no one gets to walk away from. Quirky tidbit time, some Viking traders used to brand their human property. Sometimes literally with marks, other times figuratively by giving them new names that erase their past. Imagine losing your home and your husband, only to be renamed Bjorn's Girl or Number 4. It's like being forced to change your username, but without the password reset option. The bidding begins. One man waves a chunk of silver, another counters with a goat and some furs, and the trader nods. Like a smug auctioneer, you stand there, stiff, silent, wishing you could melt into the ground. The ropes around your wrists itch, but the eyes on you burn worse. Finally, the deal is struck. You're dragged to your new owner, though the word tastes bitter even in your thoughts. He's a farmer, his beard flecked with crumbs of bread, his hands calloused from plowing. You think, maybe this is better than belonging to one of the warriors who stared at you like a future conquest. The farmer seems more interested in your labor than your fear. Small mercies, you suppose. You're taken to his homestead, a longhouse with smoke curling from its roof hole. His wife watches from the doorway, her eyes narrowing. You're competition now, an intruder in her domain. The children peer. Around her skirts, giggling, curious. You wonder if they'll ever see you as anything other than the strange woman from across the sea. Inside, you're shown your place, a mat near the hearth, chores. Explained with gestures and sharp words you barely grasp. Grind the grain, carry the water, tend the animals. You nod, because what else can you do? At least work keeps your mind from circling. Back to the battlefield you left behind, but the silence at night is worse than any chore. You lie awake, listening to the crackle of the fire and the murmur of a language that still feels like knives to your ears. You think of your husband's laugh, your old hearth, the songs of your people. Here, none of that matters. Here, you're a tool. The next market day arrives, and you watch as others are brought in, fresh captives, wide-eyed and trembling just as you were. Some are young boys already being eyed for rowing benches on longships. Others are older women, priced lower, but still sold. You realize with a jolt you're not alone, but you're also not unique. You're part of a system, and the system doesn't care. Sometimes rumors drift into the longhouse. Talk of distant voyages of captives sold in Constantinople or Baghdad, where markets dwarf anything in this settlement. The names sound exotic, terrifying, endless, and you think, it could be worse. You could be shipped farther, swallowed by lands where no one even remembers your gods. For now, your world has shrunk to this farm, this family, this set of endless chores, and yet you adapt. Because humans do. You learn to grind without complaint, to carry water with steady steps, to interpret shouts before the hand comes down. You even learn a few words of their language. Survival after. All is its own fluency, but there's always a shadow following you, the knowledge that you can be sold again at any moment. Your life is an open tab, and the farmer could close it with a nod and a trade. You're never settled, never safe, always a commodity waiting for the next barter. As you drift to sleep one night, you catch yourself thinking of silver, weights of goats and furs, of what your price might be tomorrow. And in that thought, you see the cruel truth. You're no longer a wife, no longer even a widow. You're inventory. Forever shuffled, never chosen. And that fate, worse than death, is what keeps you awake long after the hearth has gone cold. The days blur into seasons, and you find yourself measuring time not by festivals of your old home, but by Viking cycles, harvest, winter feasts, raids, markets. You're still in the farmer's longhouse, though your role has shifted from new captive to something more invisible, the kind of figure people stop noticing even though you move constantly through their lives. You chop wood, fetch water, tend animals, and scrub pots until your hands blister. You hear laughter around the fire at night, and sometimes you almost join in, but then you remember you're not family, not guest, not friend, you're property. Yet within this strange hall, you glimpse slivers of humanity. The farmer's children no longer flinch when you pass. One of them even places a carved wooden toy in your lap, as if testing whether you're capable of smiling. And you are. Briefly. Because resilience sneaks in where despair thought it had set up camp. You learn to weave with their looms, your fingers tracing patterns alien to your old tribe. You learn the rhythm of their songs, though you never sing aloud. You even learn their gods' names, whispered at rituals where you stand silent at the edge. One mainstream fact slips into your world here. Vikings really did believe their gods meddled in every detail, from crops to storms. They sacrificed animals, sometimes even people, to Odin, Thor, or Freyr, hoping for blessings. At these feasts, you watch in tense silence as a goat is slaughtered, its blood smeared on carved posts while chants rise. You pretend not to tremble. You pretend the gods of this place can't see you. But then comes the quirky tidbit, the kind of detail you'd laugh at if you weren't so tired. Viking women sometimes carried small keys on their belts as a sign of authority over the household. You spot the farmer's wife jangling hers like a medieval keychain, and you realize she holds more power than you ever will here. She looks at you often, with a mix of suspicion and pity, and you know she could end you with a word. Yet she doesn't. Maybe because even she knows there's no need. Your chains are invisible, but they're strong enough. Nights in the longhouse stretch endlessly. Smoke hangs low under the roof beams, stinging your eyes as you try to rest. You listen to the snores, the shifting bodies, the occasional drip of melted snow through the thatch. You imagine slipping away, running through forests until your legs give out. But where would you go? Every road ends in another settlement, another set of hands ready to claim you. The world has shrunk, and every path leads back to chains. Still, you carve out tiny rebellions. You hide scraps of food to share with another captive. You whisper your old prayers under your breath, weaving your gods back into nights dominated by Odin and Thor. You teach one child a lullaby from your homeland, soft and slow, and though he'll never know its meaning, you smile at the thought that your culture isn't entirely extinguished. These moments are small, almost laughably so, but they're yours. Then one evening, a skald, a storyteller, visits the hall. He sings sagas of raids, of men who carved glory with axe and shield, of women who endured or defied. The crowd leans in, enchanted, while you sit at the edge, heart pounding, because in his tales you hear faint echoes of yourself. Not your name, of course, never your name, but fragments of lives like yours, woven into legend as cautionary whispers. The skald doesn't care, but you do, because suddenly you know this is how you'll exist, not as a person remembered, but as a shadow in someone else's song. You return to your chores with that thought gnawing at you. Every time you grind grain or mend cloth, you wonder if the skald's next story will erase you further or give you some ghostly afterlife in words. The irony? Death might have been cleaner. Instead, you fade, bit by bit, breath by breath, into myth, into market, into the background noise of Viking halls. On one cold morning, as frost sparkles on, the thatch and your hands are red from icy water. You realize you've forgotten the exact pitch of your husband's laugh. It hits you harder than the rope burns ever did. That's how it ends. Not with a sword, not with fire, but with memory dissolving like mist. And you think, yes, this is the horror beyond death. Not pain, not chains, but fading until Even you don't recognize yourself. And yet, even in that fading, there's one final ember. You exist here, now, in this telling. The Vikings may have stripped you of freedom, of dignity, of identity, but they didn't strip you of the stubborn spark that insists on whispering, I was here. Whether anyone listens, that's another story. But tonight, as you curl near the dying hearth, you breathe in smoke and let that whisper echo in your chest. For a moment, it's enough. So here you are, at the end of a long, uneasy journey where you've trudged through smoke-choked ruins, felt the sting of ropes, and been weighed like silver on scales you never asked to stand upon. You've bent under chores in a foreign hall, endured rituals meant for gods who were never yours, and felt the slow erasure of memory take away even the sound of laughter you once loved. That's the cruel genius of this history. The Vikings didn't just conquer bodies, they conquered stories. And wives of fallen warriors, women like you, became shadows stitched into sagas where their names no longer mattered. But pause here. Despite all of that, your voice has carried through this retelling. Every stolen day, every tiny rebellion, the whispered prayer, the smuggled crust of bread, the lullaby shared. With a child still leaves a trace. Maybe not in the grand chronicles kings loved, but in the quiet persistence of human resilience. You weren't meant to be remembered, yet here you are, vivid enough that we've walked beside you, even if only in imagination. And maybe that's the softest defiance, that your story doesn't end in silence after all, for every longship that sailed, for every market where silver clinked, for every hall where gods drank blood, there was also you, breathing, enduring, refusing to disappear completely. That echo is yours, not theirs. Thank you for listening, for carrying this history into your own night. I'll leave you here with the fading fire, the weight of memory, and the quiet thought that even in the darkest sagas, someone like you leaves a mark. We're always saying goodbye,